Anyway, I'm up here tonight. I've kind of made it a thing of my own that I like to talk about St. Patrick and give you a little bit of the history of St. Patrick around about St. Patrick's Day. As luck would have it, it was yesterday. I hope you all enjoyed it, whether you're Irish or not, because on St. Paddy's you are. I want to tell you a little about St. Patrick himself. He was a Scotsman, believe it or not. Yeah. And his family were Roman aristocrats. And when he was 14 years old, he was kidnapped and he was taken to Ireland by two separate Irish kings. And back in those days, slavery was like the #1 commodity, be good, yeah. Nice way of making a buck, you know. And so he was taken over to Ireland. And he was kept captive there for 6 years. And he ate what he found. And he slept where he could. And he herded sheep for the Nile king, who was one of the most vile of the Irish kings back in those days. He was a collector of heads. And he wasn't real nice about it. And he put them out in front of his hut. Anybody that happened to cross him, he hung their heads up there. And so he told Patrick back in that day, he says, "You run off, you'll be hanging here one of these days." He says, "Where are you going to go, boyo? You're on an island." So here's this young kid sitting out there all by himself. Rich kid, filthy rich kid. He was an aristocrat's snot-nosed kid, basically, is what you could say he was. His name now in Latin is Sanctus Patricius, St. Patrick, of course. In Gaelic, his name is Neom Padrich, which means exactly the same thing, St. Patrick. He was a Romanized Celt, like I say, and he lived in Romano Britain, in an area which is now Scotland, the Highlands of Scotland. As he was suffering as he did over there, he was completely upset with the fact that, #1, he was no longer living the lifestyle he was accustomed to living. #2, he was a slave when in the day he had his own. And now he has to learn what it was like to be treated as he treated his slaves. Because let's face it, a lot of those people, even today, God's servants, a lot of those people don't treat the people the way that God says we should. What are you going to do? We should do what he did. We found out what it was like to be a slave. And there was no one to talk to. And you can only have so much dialogue with sheep, for crying out loud. So he started talking to God, because his father not only was a tax collector, but he was a bishop, he was a deacon in the church, and his grandfather was a bishop in the church, in the Romano Christian church, which is basically the godfather of the Catholic Church today, I guess you could say. And so he had a basis in Christianity, but he had never actually found a reason to where he felt he needed to use it. But then after he'd been a slave for a while and had gotten over the ego part of being a slave, he started talking to God. And he says, "God, help me, get me out of this. I don't want to be here. I'm actually getting to where I'd rather be dead than be here." And he started having dreams about angels who were just walking by him at night. It wouldn't bother even to stop and talk to him. And this bothered him. He thought, am I not worthy to at least converse with an angel that just happens to be walking right by me? And finally one night one of the angels stops, and he's got a parchment in his hand, a letter. And he says, "It's time for you to go home. And according to the letter that I have in my hand, it's time for you to go home and learn about the God that you're talking to. And once you've learned as much as you can learn about the truth of your Lord, you need to spread that word." He was the beginnings of some of the first Anglo missionaries in the world. Because in those days, the only people that really got ministered to were the wealthy or those who were already Christians. If you were poor, you didn't have the opportunity to go to school, so you didn't learn to read, so therefore a Bible wouldn't do you much good. Exactly. But Patrick had now learned that it didn't matter whether you were rich or poor, because he was the poorest of the poor. I mean, even the lowest people on the social rung in Ireland could look down on him, because he was just a slave, just a slave. Then he started realizing all of us are just slaves. We're slaves to our Lord. And we have to appease that Lord just like Patrick had to appease his. If you don't do right by your master, you're doing wrong. There's no black, no gray area. It's either black or white right there. And so he decides it's time to go home. He's going to take the word of this angel that had stopped and spoken to him. So he sneaks off like a thief in the middle of the night. It's 200 miles in Ireland in the winter to the coast. Imagine that, yeah. Ireland is like that far from the Arctic Circle. It's chilly, you know, brisk, I guess you could say. Sure. And the only thing that he had to wear is what he made. It's not like somebody brought him a jacket or brought him a pair of good leg hosen or something like that. What he made out of twigs, what he made out of the tree branches, what he made out of dead animals is all he had to keep himself warm. But he made it. And when he got to the coast, there was a Greek ship sitting there. He speaks Latin. He doesn't speak Greek. There's a slave that is just coming down the boardwalk helping unload. The slave speaks Latin. Here he is again in the situation of a slave, now talking to another slave who's going to help him eventually become one of the greatest prophets and missionaries this world has ever seen. He tells this guy, I got to get out of here. I got to go home. I got to go to school. I got to go to seminary. I've got so many things to do. I can't even get on your boat. I don't have a dime to my name. Guy says, you know what? I've been on this boat for 14 years. It's time for me to go. Give me your coat, I'll give you mine. Next thing you know, he's no longer a slave to the Irish, he's a slave to the Greeks, but he's going back home. Tell me God didn't have a hand in that right there. He gets home, gets off the boat. First thing he does is run into a bunch of Picts. Now, Picts are probably the only people in the world at that time that were more violent and vicious than the Irish. These guys were the guys that even the Celts had trouble with in Scotland. He runs into a band of them, but he wants to go home. They speak his language because he grew up in the same area that the Picts propagate. He says, I need to go home. He says, well, we need somebody to carry our stuff. Third time, St. Patrick is a slave. Now, Picts were known for a lot of unusual proclivities, and one of them was homosexuality. St. Patrick had to suffer that as well as they went back to the Highland Mountains, to where he finally was allowed to escape and make his way back home. Took a year from the time that he got off that boat, running around with these Picts, servicing them in whatever manner they figured was necessary. But he did it, and he got home. And when he got home, his family was just so happy to see him. You could imagine your kid being gone now over 7 years. Haven't seen him. Was a snot-nosed little spoiled brat when he left. Now he's back home, a strapping young man, and wanting to learn the ways of the Lord. Well, I guess his family just jumped right in there like we would as well. Started educating him the best he could. Now there's no proof his name is on no rolls in any form of seminary school in the Romano Christian church in those days. But when your dad's a bishop, a lot of things, or when your grandfather's a bishop, there's a lot of things you can get done, I imagine. And there's a lot of fables and there's a lot of legends around St. Patrick on how he got his education. I think God just reached down and gave it to him and says, all right, when we're done here, you're going back.